A horrific, deadly terrorist attack in England this morning on Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the Jewish year. Nigel Farage, of course, comes out horrified by the attack, thoughts and prayers with those affected. And it just brings to mind the utter failure of Sadiq Khan and Keir Starmer for vocally supporting terrorists, more or less, the Palestinian state, and emboldening those to go after Jewish people. Just horrific. Watch what Nigel Farage said over a year ago about British government support for anti-West groups, mostly Islamic. Check it out right here.
Since October the 7th, we've seen hate marches in Britain. We've seen the rise of lots of anti-Semitism, particularly from a lot of Muslims, frankly. How do we integrate these people into Britain? And if they don't share our values, if they are anti-Semitic, if they are radical in this way, support jihad, for example, should we try and encourage them to leave?
We have seen quite a lot of hate directed at Jews coming from radical Islamists. We've also got lots of white people called Jocasta, who are very middle class, who seem to hate Jews now as well. It's quite extraordinary. If you look at those marches, there's an awful lot of middle-class white British people on those marches as well. I can't explain it.
Now, check out this clip of Nigel Farage eviscerating Sadiq Khan for not standing up for Britain's Jews, for London's Jews. They're scared, and there are things that are happening against them that are going unpunished, and Sadiq Khan is directly responsible. Watch.
Let me tell you why this is a diversion, why we're not having a proper debate. So Khan there, accusing Anderson of being anti-Muslim, Islamophobic, racist. That's the same mayor of London, the very same mayor of London, who didn't say a word about what happened in Parliament Square last week, didn't say a word about from the river to the sea being projected onto Big Ben. And I'm not going to say that the way Lee Anderson put his words was necessarily the brightest use of English. But Mr. Khan, if you're worried about racism, if you're worried about discrimination, what about what's being said to Jews in London, the city that you're the mayor of? What about those scenes in Parliament Square last week? I'm waiting to hear you say something.
And of course, at the core of all this is the fact that Britain is letting in migrants. They don't know where they're coming from. Check out this clip from years ago, 9 years ago, of Nigel Farage warning about the influx of Islamist migrants and refugees into Britain and the effect that it would have. Just unreal how on point Nigel Farage was.
Now, look, I want to move on to a tricky area of sorts, the overthrow of the Assad dictatorship in Syria, because it presents quite a problem for Britain. And there is likely now to be a wave of refugees fleeing the country for Europe. And there will also, of course, be a lot of asylum claims. Nigel, a number of Brits went over to Syria to fight for the Islamic State. Are they going to come back to Britain once they are let out of jail, given that the rebels are letting these people out?
No, as far as I'm concerned, they left our state. They joined the Islamic State. I don't want a single one of them back. And this is the problem, that when you get boats crossing the English Channel, no doubt there are some people in those boats who are fleeing horror. I don't doubt that for a minute. But the problem is, and by the way, ISIS said this back in 2015. They said they would flood the continent of Europe with their operatives. Even if 1 in 1,000 that crosses into our port of Dover, if 1 in 1,000 is an ISIS activist intent on mayhem, intent on murder, intent on mass killing, then I'm sorry, we can't have anybody. Yes, we'll give food aid. Yes, we'll give medical aid. We'll help people around the world in genuine distress. We cannot open our borders and risk terrorism. And frankly, the first duty of government is to protect the nation and protect its people. We must not take that risk.
No, and I mean, you've already got a migrant crisis over there. I mean, this is the last thing that you need. And what about the other way around in light of the Syrians returning back home now? How many who sought asylum in Britain do you think will actually go back, or you think, nah, they're done, they'll stay?
Well, we have a backlog of asylum claims from Syrians, including one who was publicly threatened to kill me repeatedly, which is very charming. He's currently in police custody. If the reason for claiming asylum was that Assad was in power, well, then surely it's time for them all to go home. And that is why lots of European countries yesterday, including us reluctantly in the end, have said, right, we're not processing any more of the existing claims, not taking any more new ones. Austria are even talking about returning people to Syria. Now, it's a complex situation. We don't know whether what comes will be even worse than Assad. But let's have some degree of optimism that people can go back. 14 million people in all have been displaced from Syria over the last decade. And for that country to prosper, it needs them to go back home.
Yeah, that's a really, really fair point. Nigel Farage, it's been wonderful to speak with you. Thank you so much for joining us on the show this evening. Appreciate it.